Thanks, Prof. I guess you're now touching on the non-audit services, which is something I'd like to park a bit, because whilst we on the reporting, Mitesh, on ISA 570 on the going concern, where now the auditor must report, in much more detail, irrespective of whether there are signs that this organization might have going concern problems. Do you see this assisting in terms, because I think there has been inconsistencies in terms of what do you really do from an assessment point of view? Are you feeling comfortable as an auditor that this now assists you on standardizing what needs to be done? In some instances you find in assessing going concern, I've seen an auditor unpacking the issues in the audit committee and grilling the audit committee, understanding what's happening, is in the horizon around suppliers, customers. But in some instances, I've seen an auditor saying, give us a written representation and tell us if you're comfortable with what we seem to be concerned with. So how do you see this then assisting you more from a consistency point of view?
Thanks, Sandy. I think for me, it's going to start giving us comfort, because when you look at the ISA 570, it speaks specifically about getting sufficient appropriate evidence around the going concern assumption that management uses. So, like you mentioned previously, people or auditors used to get away with the fact of getting a management representation letter. What we're finding now is that the emphasis being put on the statement of giving going concern comfort to the audit committee or the stakeholder is ensuring that we as the auditors are now putting more emphasis by involving specialists within the going concern environment. So entities that have got clear indications of going concern, losses, negative equity, etc. We tend to stress test much more to make sure that, like you mentioned the example, we sign off the opinion and 2 days later the entity goes into liquidation. On the same token, with entities that have got positive results, we do very similar tests, and I think that's where auditors used to get away with the fact of just a management representation letter, because we found there are entities that are showing huge profits, but those profits are not sustainable. And stakeholders are now asking, how did you stress test at least for the next 12 to 18 months, making sure that this, the entity is going to be a going concern. And it gives us more comfort in allowing us to do that work, because we used to get resistance from industry to say, why do you want to get into so much of detail when we're telling you that it's a going concern? So these type of statements are now allowing us to get information, give us the comfort, and give stakeholder comfort in terms of the type of work we can do around going concern.
Sure. Themba, I know you're representing the academia, but in some of the discussions, a strong public representative sense came out of, from your discussions.
Yep.
Coming back to the non-audit services, at the moment, the RBA, the Code of Professional Conduct, assists in articulating what can be done as non-audit work and what cannot.
Yeah.
Do you believe that that clear articulation actually assists the auditor and even assists the public in terms of closing that gap, or you believe there are other issues that must be taken into consideration?
Well, thank you, first of all, Cindy, for affording me that opportunity to respond. Let me start off by saying that, one of the key attributes that auditors possess is an attribute of independence. And I think it is important for us to safeguard that with everything we have, because without that, the public loses confidence on the work that has been done by the auditor. So if we are to follow that thought process, there are certain issues that might be seen as threats to that independence. And one of those actually is the fact that there might just be too much that the auditor is doing other than the focus on the audit work that he's supposed to do. And because of that, whilst the auditor might be maintaining that he's actually independent, there might be a perception out there that he's not actually fully independent. And because of the fact that the product that we produce at the end of the day is dependent on the public to view and get that comfort in order for them to be able to rely, then it puts us in a very compromised position where we might, as auditors, think that we've done everything to satisfy that that need in terms of the levels that we have reached in terms of our delivery. But our client, who is the public that we are trying to protect, does not feel the same. So I think it is quite important for us to direct our efforts in making sure that when that audit is done, it leaves no question mark on the part of the recipient, which is the stakeholder that is intended to use that report. So basically, I think the additional requirements will tend to confirm the independence of the auditor, and that there is no self-review threat, for example, that might compromise the independence of the auditor, where he's doing the work and then becomes the referee on the work that he has already done. So I really think those functions should be separate. And of course, this does not give even the threshold to say how much of this can be regarded to be within. But I think the control measure that we have is the fact that it must be pre-approved by the audit committee. But I think, in my view, as little as possible should be done by the auditor, so that the auditor focuses on doing the audit and giving that assurance that's needed by the public. Thank you.
Right. In fact, just to come back to you, one of the things one has been wondering about is being in the academia.
Yep.
How are you keeping up with these developments from a skills development point of view?
Well, I think it's interesting that you
Sorry.
you know, one of the things that I'm unique about is that my ears are not the same as everybody's ears, so this thing falls off. One of the key things that I've observed in academia is the fact that, SAICA has been the profession in general has been very proactive. Proactive in the sense that we realize that there is not a finite body of knowledge that you need to transfer to a student, then such that when he exits the academic space, he's fully equipped with everything, because the profession just keeps changing. And the profession being a moving target means, therefore, that you need to, apart from the technical content, to equip the learner with the skills that will enable them to survive and be able to continuously update themselves as new things emerge, and thus becoming lifelong learners. So I think that part cannot be underemphasized, the part of not really focusing as in the past on the technical content, but actually giving them the pervasive skills that enable them to become lifelong learners and continue to adapt themselves as and when they grow up in the profession. So to me, that's the key thing that we have captured in the academic space.
Okay. Maybe one last question before we give the audience a chance. On the auditor independence, Prof, you touched on it, and being a member of, or an audit committee chair, and I think Louis as well, more from a client point of view, the impact of auditor rotation. And it's a controversial topic at the moment, because I think different, I'll say councils are coming with different recommendations at the moment. The Companies Act is saying 5 years, and there's understanding that that is just for the firm, or rather just for the auditor, not the entire firm. The public sector has done the rotation based on the entire firm. But you, as the recipient of the services, the audit committee chair, interested in the quality and the independence of the auditor, how do you see the rotation impacting you, be it 5 years of the entire firm or 5 years of the auditor?
So on my side, I have not experienced anything negative about the current rotation arrangements, where the engagement partner has to rotate every 5 years. That hasn't constituted a problem. I believe that that allows enough time for the auditor to get to know the business and also to really add value. Because I believe that that's very, very important. And of course, the auditor the engagement partner would be working with a team, and then there are other members of his team that get to know the business. And then the rotation after 5 years, as I say, or 7 years, to me, I don't have strong views, as long as the level of familiarity must get too relaxed. So we as audit committee, we always engage the audit firm, the audit partner, as if we're meeting him for the first time. When we discuss the scope, we discuss the issues, we talk about the business, about the controls. We don't want that complacency for a feeling of familiarity. So before every audit committee, I have a serious engagement with the external auditor 4 times a year to have those discussions. We're acquaintances, we're not friends. So about rotation of the firm, because in my view, the key engagement is between the partner and the client. I don't have strong views that there's a absolute necessity to rotate firms as such. I'm satisfied that you are taking care of the risk of complacency through the current arrangement, but it must just be sustained. But of course, there are other considerations in the South African market of transformation that come into the picture, and those things cannot be ignored. You cannot just create a situation where there will be no opportunity for new firms that are building up to actually be able to engage the bigger companies in the country.
Thanks, Prof. Louis.
Cindy, I think from my side as well, not a huge issue on whether to rotate or not, but I do think that one must possibly just take a step back and say there's quite a lot happening at the moment when we speak about succession planning at management, rotation of management. We look at the 9-year threshold on directorships, etc. I think more importantly is just to say, is there a process that tests adequately, that all the standards that Prof has also referred to, that we properly assess and adhere to that, and that there is enough room for issues to be raised, that if that relationship goes beyond what we think it should be, that their action can be taken. I think it's really a 50-50 call. One can surely not argue fresh eyes on the business and the quality that will add to the audit, but on the other hand, there's also value in experience. And I think this whole process that we are busy with at the moment, we're talking a lot about combined insurance. I think we possibly still suffer a bit from coming out of an economic downturn and some of the crises where it's just human to try and firstly determine almost why I'm not responsible and why you are responsible. And in that process, we pass the buck left, right, and center. In the spirit of combined assurance, I think audit, management, and board has a responsibility for sustainable performance. And that should drive us, and possibly less emphasis because of the risks of liability, etc., etc. We must first put the absolute and ultimate model in place and then look at the rules. I think from time to time, form over substance, rules and my responsibility derails a good outcome on what is best for sustainable performance.
Right. Look, thanks. And I guess if I turn to the audience, that discussion and that debate has probably allowed you to have your own questions and your own comments as audit committee members, as clients. And I'd like to then, if there's someone with a mic to assist, there is a mic available. If I can have, by show of hands, people who would like to pose some questions to the panel. And you're allowed to say who you want to pose the question to, or we can also leave it open. We'll take 3 questions at a time. We've got a question here, followed by that one, and the lady in pink. It's still not on.
Okay, now it's on.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lerato. In terms of the additional reporting for auditors, to what extent do you report, and where do you cross the line in terms of reporting confidential information, confidential client information, maybe giving away competitive edge, etc., don't then auditors expose themselves to that risk?
Okay, thank you. And there was the second question, the gentleman on the third row towards the end.